Okay, I hope you all can see the screen. Please do respond.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
great.
sir.
Okay, fine. So far we've gone through defining the problem, developing an approach to the problem, formulating a research design. In this session, we are going to look at doing the fieldwork. That because you're going to be doing the fieldwork, there isn't much to talk about. But however, some basic concerns when you actually go out on the field and do it. Of course, all of you are doing web-based data collection, so a lot of it may not be quite relevant, but still, for the sake of completing the syllabus, I would also like to briefly touch upon it. Also about preparing, that is step 4 and step 5, preparing data and analyzing data. So we're going to be briefly touching on these things in this particular class. So step 3, we've done all of this. Okay, now the fieldwork data collection process. So in the traditional method, when you go out with a questionnaire, there are several different methods, or there are several different things you need to be sensitized to, and you should consider these factors when you really actually go out on the field and collect data. Now, first is selection of field workers, then train them properly, training of field workers, supervision. Supervision is again important, validation of field work, and eventually evaluation, right? So typically I'm talking about the questionnaire method. Training of field workers. So it involves making an initial contact. How exactly do you train them? Because you're actually sending out a bunch of people with a questionnaire in hand. You're going to tell them how to make the first initial contact with the respondent, how to talk to them, and how to get their attention, how to get them to agree to sort of talk to you and get the response. Asking the questions, probing, recording answers, terminating the interview. So sequentially, how you sort of engage with the respondent. So that is what we're going to briefly look at in this session. Now, selection of field workers should actually be done based on what exactly you are hiring them for, because there could be different kinds of work. Suppose you're hiring someone to do the observation thing, you might actually look for a different set of skills. If you're actually going to ask them to engage with them, ask questions and probe them and get actual answers, then maybe you look for a different set of skills. And suppose you're going to show them some ad clutter, and then based on them get a response, maybe you will require a different set of skills. If you're going to conduct a focus group, perhaps you will require an entirely different set of skills, right? So in this particular thing, like I said, we are actually largely going to look at the questionnaire method. And so general thing, they should be healthy, outgoing, communicative, pleasant in appearance, educated and experienced. So a lot of these things are actually self-explanatory. I really don't think I need to explain any of this. Communicative and pleasant appearance is important, because you don't want to send somebody out there who is actually sort of not properly groomed, or someone who is sort of intimidating to look at or whatever. So you've got to make the respondent at ease. So yeah. Making initial contact, interviews should be trained to make opening remarks that will convince potential respondents that their participation is important. So sort of give it a lot of credence, whatever task you're doing. So make them believe that your participation is actually pretty important, and that you're actually contributing in a very valuable way to a larger cause. So it could be a research on COVID, or it could be a research on, let's say any other concerns about the population. So make them feel important. And even if you're spending 3 to 5 minutes with them, tell them that, what you're doing is actually for a larger cause, and that it is going to help a wider cross-section of society or population or whatever. So make them feel, that the task they're undertaking is important and it's meaningful, right? Not that it's a trivial pursuit. Ask the questions. The first important thing is the respondent should be fairly familiar with the questionnaire. Okay, he should be aware of the logical flow of the questionnaire, and the question should be asked in the order in which they appear in the questionnaire. So you should not paraphrase it, use exact wording in the questionnaire. You would have actually noticed it most of the time. I don't know if you guys have been speaking, or if you speak to people who call from, let's say telecallers who call you from banks or with credit card or whatever, they actually read out from whatever, from their manual or whatever. They choose exact same sentence every single time they talk to you. Can I speak to you for 5 minutes? Is this call is being recorded? Is it? I mean, whatever it is that they tell you, you would actually, it's almost robotic, and they actually read out. They don't use their own words, right? So even the questionnaire method, you are actually encouraged to be familiar with the questionnaire, but don't tinker with the words. Try to use more or less the same words, not more or less, maybe they say exactly the same words, so that the uh, the essence is not lost in translation. Read each question slowly, repeat the questions if it's not understood, ask every applicable question. This is important because sometimes there are branching questions, so some questions may not be applicable. And follow instructions, skip patterns, and probe. So probe is basically encouraging them to talk more. Okay, sometimes you repeat the question, and sometimes you actually repeat the respondent's reply back to them to make sure that this is exactly what they said. Right. So sometimes you pause, so give enough time for them to maybe articulate their points of view, whatever it is that they are saying. Then again, whenever they respond well, maybe you can give a reassuring smile, or a nod or whatever, or make sure that that, like I said, make them believe that you're doing something important, it's worthwhile, and whatever they're doing well, and it's meaningful and important to you and for him. So that general reassurance. Then in case the person has doubts, get clarifications. Uh, Use objective neutral questions or comments. Right. Now recording the answers quickly. Record responses during the interview. Use his or her own words. Try as much as possible to write exactly what he said, not your understanding of what he said. Right. Don't paraphrase it. So whatever the person has said, try to record those very words. Do not try to see meaning in what he said and put your own words. Uh, Include everything that pertains to the question objectives. Include all probes and comments. Repeat the response as it is written down. And again, check with him. So you write what he has said and said, "This isn't this what you said," right? So basically write what he said and said, "Isn't this what you said?" So get a confirmation. And most importantly, terminating the interview is really important. After you sort of, after the person participates in the interview process, he should be left with a positive feeling about the interview. So you should sort of reassure him. It's not like once your job is done, you simply walk away, or give a half smile or whatever. Make sure that you are grateful, show your gratitude in words, and then with a warm smile, and appreciate the effort. Say that it's for a larger cause, and that he or she has done well in spending 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 8, whatever time he spent with you. So terminate it on a very pleasant note and make him feel important that he's done a good job. Now, supervision of field workers. Now, this again, basically what happens is in a typical market research company, I'm talking about quantitative research here, in a typical market research company, so you would actually be involved in designing the questionnaire, you would be involved in the research experiment and the market research design and all of that. Typically, you will not be going out and conducting the survey, right? So if a survey involves talking to 300 people, this job typically gets outsourced to people. Each market research company has its group of people who are actually trained, right? So your job is to sort of be the brain behind design of the questionnaire, and how exactly it should be worded, what is the thinking behind it, and all of that. So primarily your job would be there. Somebody who's done a course in market research, you would actually be doing more the design of the questionnaire, designing the whole blueprint, creating the blueprint and how it has to be executed. Okay, what to do, how to do, when to do, where to do. But actual doing would actually be done by someone else on the field. Let's say if you want 500 responses from all over the country, you would say, I would want around 250 from the north, 250 from the south, and based on that, you would also be picking up cities. You would decide to pick up, randomly somebody from Coimbatore, somebody from Kanpur, somebody from Nagpur, somebody from, let's say, Ahmedabad, and you see, I'm sorry, these are Indian cities. Largely, I'm just talking about some random Indian cities. So yeah, so basically, so you will have people in these cities who will do the survey for you, right? Okay. Supervision of quality workers. Yeah. So there are different kinds of supervision that you would do. That is because you yourself are not doing the survey, somebody else is doing the field work for you. So quality control and editing. So quality control is essentially because you have designed something, you have designed the whole research methodology in your mind, you have certain objective in mind. So that has to be clearly conveyed. Right. So make sure that there is no deviation. Let's say, for instance, it's observation. Okay, your research design is observation. So if somebody is going and observing, they should be clearly told what they're observing, what they should be recording. Right. So if there is deviation in that, you will have problems, as in that is the quality control and editing that we are talking about. Similarly, when asking questionnaire, again, if there are branch questions, it has to be asked in a certain way. Right. So the whatever thing you have in mind, whatever the researcher has in mind, original researcher has in mind, that has to be conveyed to the guy who is actually conducting the field work. Now, sampling controllers, again, you have a certain, let's say you have a systematic sample method in your mind. So now you have to ensure that, for the accuracy of results, the systematic sampling actually takes place on the field. That, every 50th person or every 90th person is contacted, and, even in a convenient sampling method, for instance, sometimes what you do is you just stand there and say, talk to every 23rd person who walks in, or talk to every 7th person who walks in. So you don't actually approach every person who comes in, right? Even when you resort to convenient sampling, you will not approach every person who comes into the mall. You will only go to, because again, there also you do some randomization. So you will basically say, I will only talk to every 7th person. So that is what I'm talking about, making sure that sampling control, whatever has been instructed, is actually being adhered to by the guy who is conducting the research. Then control of cheating. So control of cheating is sometimes what happens is the worker or the guy who is your field worker might actually not conduct the survey and fill in the questionnaire himself. A few ticks, he's required to do 30 per day. He may do 25, and 5 he may do it himself. So that also has to be checked. Then central office control is basically about costs, efficiency, and all of those kinds of things. Okay, so quality control and editing is the procedures, whether the procedures are properly followed and implemented. Sampling control is whether interviews are following the sampling plan which is given, whether it's simple random or judgment plan or snowball or whatever. So whether that particular thing is adhered to. Control of cheating is making sure that the exercise is undertaken its true spirit, and not that the guy himself is filling in some columns and responses and all of that. And lastly, central office control is largely about cost control, information, because there is a cost involved in reaching out and conducting the survey. So that is a control of field workers. Validation of field work, again, this is to ensure that whatever cheating or duplication doesn't take place, like, the reports are sent back to his office, and then when you randomly take up around 5 to 10%, call up the respondent and see if this person has actually undertaken the survey, right? Because that is the only reason why names and contact numbers of the respondent is selected, so that you can actually verify whether this survey took place, right? So that is a feedback loop mechanism. 10 to 25% of the respondents to inquire whether the fieldwork has actually conducted interviews, contacted them, and that is the cross check. And also the demographic cross check, just to check, call up and ask what age group are you in? Are you in 20 to 30 age group, 30 to 40 age group, and which city are you? Randomly 1 or 2 questions just to ascertain that whether this person was actually reached out to. Now, evaluation of field workers, there are 2 things, qualitative and quantitative. Quantity is, of course, how many respondents have you done every day? And also, what is the response rate? Like, say, for instance, okay, these are the parameters for evaluating field workers, quantity and quality. Cost and time, that is, if you're able to, let's say, for instance, on a given day, if you're able to get on the field, if you're able to get 30 responses, right? What is the cost which the organization has to bear to get these 30 responses, right? So it's quite possible somebody else is able to do only 22. And it's also quite possible that another guy on the field is able to get 35 response per day, whatever. So this particular thing is about the cost and time. How many responses each of these guys, the field workers, are able to get every day. Plus, there is also something called the response rates. So it is not like every person you approach is going to be favorable, or is he going to be, that person is going to be enthused and excited about your research work. So some of them will turn you down outrightly. They'll say, like, I'm sorry, I'm here on a rushed official meeting, or I'm not very keen to answer your questions or whatever. So response rate is also another problem. So 2 measures of whether the guy has done well. One is the quantitative method. One is, let's say, for instance, what percentage of the people you have approached have actually agreed? Is it 50%? Is it 80%? Is it 90%? So that also tells you something about your demeanor, something about the way you've sort of treated the person. Have you been polite? Have you been approachable? And so all of those kinds of things. So response rate is one, and how many successful interviews you've conducted. Then, of course, the second is quality, which is the quality of interviewing and the quality of data that you've collected. So again, there's no point in having 40 different responses, but then several of them are not fully usable because it's incomplete data, it's not properly conducted, or so that is again another issue. Make sure that quality of data is also good. So this is the way of evaluating field workers. Moving on, so this is step 6, data preparation process. Okay, so preparing and analyzing data. So we have done with step 4 now. Of course, you are doing a web-based thing, so a lot of these things don't apply. But like I said, for the sake of completion of the course, I just had to sensitize you to some of the issues when you do on the field data collection. Now, data preparation process, again, it's got a preliminary plan of data analysis, questionnaire checking, editing, coding, transcribing, data cleaning, statistically adjusting the data, and selecting a data analysis strategy. Right? So we'll look at all these things in the coming slides. So questionnaire checking is sometimes, the questionnaire, like you said, you are employing other people to do your work. Let's say your sample size could be 500. So people have gone to different cities and got all these 500 responses. It will come back to you. So basically you get papers back, thick, big stacks of papers, from each of this, let's say from 12 different cities, you will get a bunch of 50 papers each or something like that. Right. So those papers, when it comes back to you, you have to sort them and you have to see, you have to go through, sift through the data and make sense of it. Right. So physically, you will have a questionnaire with you. It is filled. It will have the respondent's name. It will have its preferences, ticks, choices, this and that, and all of that. So now it is for you to look for how many of things, let's say, for instance, further use that questionnaire and make sense of it. OK, so let's look at what happens. So now parts of the questionnaire may be incomplete. Right. Sometimes the respondent might not have responded. Sometimes the guy on the field, your response collector might not have done a good job of including it. He might have skipped something by mistake. Inadvertently, he would have forgotten to ask a question and so on and so forth. So the pattern of responses may indicate the respondent did not understand or follow the instructions. Sometimes, the respondent may not have been aware of the situation. For whatever reasons, you will sometimes find incomplete data. Okay, not everything is filled, so you'll have a problem. Sometimes the responses will show little variance, which means most of the responses will look identical. Right. So it could either be because of manipulation or because, people of a certain area think alike. So they have identical choices, but that is difficult to substantiate. But yeah, so that is again another problem. If responses show little variance, if everybody answers in a particular pattern, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4. So then there is a problem, right? So again, 1 or 2 pages missing. You have a lengthy questionnaire, 6 or 7 pages, 1 or 2 things missing. Questionnaire is received after cutoff date of analysis, and questionnaire is answered by someone who does not qualify for participation. Again, sometimes you may want to get responses from males between the age of 25 and 40. Maybe you are doing something on shaving. Right. So you want responses only from male 25 to 40. And if they don't belong to this particular age category, you don't want responses. Right. So yeah, that may not sometimes be met. Again, if so all of these would constitute unsatisfactory responses. So now there are different ways of treating this. First is return to the field. If you think substantial data is missing, you can send it back to the original guy who conducted and said, please look at these things. If you can reach out to the original respondent and get further responses, that is first option. Second is assign missing values. That is, if you think that you can sort of, if the number of deviations are very little, you may yourself give a neutral value, neither unsatisfactory nor satisfactory kind of answers. If the thing is minimal, and you can use your judgment and do it. If the deviation is minimal, or you may choose to totally discard it. You think that it's not worthwhile pursuing it, and you are not going to get any meaningful insight out of further pursuing this particular respondent, so you may discard it. So either send it back, fill it yourself using whatever benchmark or thumbnail rules, or discard it altogether. Again, assigning missing value, you can substitute a neutral value, which will not substantially alter the response, case-wise deletion or pair-wise deletion. So you can choose to completely delete that question. So all of those things can be done. Now, editing, returning to the field, assigning missing values, discarding unsatisfied. These are the 3 ways in which you can deal with questionnaire which are not fully, let's say, not completed satisfactorily if the responses are not satisfactory. Okay, coding. So the idea of coding is very simple. Now it's not relevant when you do a web-based survey. So what happens is, I told you, you get 300 response from the field. So how are you going to analyze it? Right. So basically you have some words in English and you have some options. So basically what you do is question number 1, you will write as 1, and the answers you will write it as again 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and tick again is. So you basically try to put it in machine language. Right. So each of those things are given a particular number, like say response 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 will be called. Okay, it is something like, okay, I think I'm perhaps confusing a little bit. So for question number 1, it will be question number 1, and the responses will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and question number 2 will be 2, and then responses instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it will be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and from third question it will be 11, 13, 14, 15, 16. Right. So eventually you will have a long list of numbers 1 to 200, and say 78 will be the answer for question number maybe 14. Did you get it? You will be assigning numerals to each of those. So you may have a questionnaire with say 15 questions. Okay, so each of these questions you will be coding it using numbers. You will say something like question number, first question may have 5 responses. So your 1 will be question number 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 will be answers to question number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 will be the first answer to question number 2, and so on and so forth. So you eventually you will have a long list of numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 till 140. So when you say what is 112, so 112 may be response C to question number 9. I hope I'm clear. I mean, did you get it?
What
Yeah.
you're talking about? Is this like relevant for today?
No, it is certainly not. Okay, it's only for sake of completion. Let's not waste time. It's really not relevant for you because you're going to do it. I was just trying to explain what the market research process is. It's really certainly not relevant. I'm glad you asked this. So let's move on. Okay, really not relevant. So you don't have to really bother about it. I'll share the slides with you. Let's quickly move on. Okay, coding. I'm skipping coding then. Okay. Coding is not relevant. Code book is basically the book which gives that. I think a couple of you understood. I said maybe Shamika understood it because she was nodding, and so I think, yeah. But anyway, I'm skipping that bit. Okay, code book, coding questionnaire, department. So this is exactly how the coding actually happens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like I said, in the digital era, when you're conducting all this online, really these things aren't so important. Okay, unless you're working for a market research firm. This is how it will look on SPSS. Yeah, codebook excerpt. Yeah, so I'll share the slides with you. Really, yeah, I'm so glad that you asked this question. Now, ethics in marketing research, researchers and field workers should make the respondents feel comfortable by addressing their apprehensions and concerns, make sure that they're put at ease and they feel easy and comfortable interacting with you. Researchers and field workers should respect respondents' time, feelings, privacy, and right to self-determination. So at any point of time they feel that they are not comfortable answering any further questions, you should respect that. You should not keep pushing them, right? If they say, I'm not comfortable answering any more question, or thank you for your time, or you're taking too much of your time, please leave me alone. So please leave them alone if they say that. All right. So yeah, don't be pushy. Yeah. And researchers and fieldwork agencies are responsible to clients for following accepted procedures for the selection, training, supervision, validation, evaluation of field workers. Fieldwork procedures should be carefully documented and made available to clients. Of course, all these things are from a, let's say, commercial, from the point of view of a commercial market research organization. Yes, Prajwal, something funny, something interesting. Yeah, something eliciting a smile from you. Tell me. If it's a question, ask me. If it's a comment, you can make that comment.
Nothing.
Yeah, I don't know. Something was really amusing you. Okay, yeah, I caught that smile. But anyway, yeah, let's move on. So this is the sort of concept map of whatever we discussed in today's class. So 2 quick sessions we had on field work, selection of field works, training of field workers, supervision of field workers, validation of field work, evaluation of field workers, and followed by data analysis plan, data preparation process, questionnaire checking, editing, coding, transcribing, data cleaning, all of which is actually quite not relevant in your case, like Prajwal pointed out, and adjusting the data, selecting data analysis. So that is it for this class. I'll share the slides with you in some time and also the answer sheets to your quiz that we just conducted. Yeah. Any questions, queries, any other difficulty in conducting the any difficulty in conducting the questionnaire that you've prepared?
So,
yeah.
Like in the next class, you'll explain us the format for submitting.
Yeah, I will tell you what exactly. Next class is all about the final report. So because none of you have a base in statistics, so I am not going to teach you chi-square or let's say hypothesis testing and all of that, right? Because all this business statistics, it's a 3-credit course in itself. So I'll have to take 30 hours of classes to explain all. Do you guys have exposure to this? Hypothesis testing, t-test, z-test?
No.
Okay, so maybe we'll do a basic level of analysis. I will tell you what is a basic level of analysis we can do with your questionnaire. So I've seen most of your questionnaires, right? So of course,
also, like the question is also the SurveyMonkey or Google Forms both give out their like pie charts for each question.
Correct, exactly. So you can precisely submit those. You can submit pie charts. You can submit column charts, histograms, make reports, as in make columns about what the responses. Each question you can take out and look at the responses. You can, okay, yeah, I will talk about all those things. What exactly should come in the report in the next class. Okay, so yeah, so maybe I'll have 1 or 2 more classes in this lecture mode and we'll be finishing the course, and you will have 1 more quiz for 15 marks. Your submission date is Friday, but I'll accept till Sunday because I think by Monday latest I will have to finalize the grades and submit to the office. You will officially get it from the office. Okay, any other questions, concerns, queries? Okay, all right, so that is it then. We'll meet tomorrow with the perhaps the last class or maybe the penultimate class. Okay, all right, thank you all. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Sir.
Thank you, sir.